Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. So today's topic is going to be related to a past conversation we've had about boundaries. And if you know me, then you know that I love boundaries. I love talking about boundaries. I love implementing boundaries. I think that they are just really important to being able to be healthy individuals, being able to set limits in your life and not being in situations where anyone can have access to the important parts of your life, or anyone can really be close enough to hurt you, right? So it's really important to allow certain relationships to be close and to build trust and companionship with certain people where you share certain things with them. But there is a whole group of people that don't really deserve that access to your life. And there are people that maybe at some point had that access, but depending on kind of different things that may have transpired or happened over time, maybe just a single incident, that privilege kind of gets it changes and it gets maybe taken away. And so I'm a huge fan of making sure that I know I'm responsible for the things I allow in and out of my life. And if there's something that isn't serving me, it's not good for me, it's actually causing harm or just somehow taking away or draining me, I'm responsible for addressing it. I'm responsible for taking care of myself. And so we've talked, I think last year I had an episode about boundaries, but this specific topic is actually based on a quote that a friend of mine posted on Facebook. It was just kind of a quote that was going around the internet. She shared it, and I just thought it was a really, really good one to think about. So it's by an unknown author, but I'm going to read it to you real quick, and then I'll kind of tell you what I'm thinking about it. So this quote says, "People will call it holding grudges. I'm calling it, I saw who you are, and I'm not unseeing it." So let me read it to you one more time. People will call it holding grudges. I'm calling it, I saw who you are, and I'm not unseeing it. So to me, that basically is about boundaries. And everyone might read that a little differently, but when I read it, the first thing that went through my mind was, that if you see something in someone that either you don't like it or it causes harm to you, if a behavior that someone does is a harmful behavior or just not a behavior that aligns with your values or your way of life, then you're going to make a choice potentially that is going to help you kind of distance yourself from this person or remove them for your life. And a lot of people look at those kinds of choices as like, well, you're just having a hard time letting go of this grudge, you're mad and you won't move on from it. And I am not I think obviously every situation is different, but generally speaking, if you have given thought to the reason to distance yourself from someone, then and that decision is based on, it's not just based on emotional reaction, it's not impulsive, but it's actually based on good thought, logic mixed with emotion, looking at kind of the overall picture, then I think that's a really, really good boundary and something that actually I think a lot of people should be doing more of. Because I know a lot of people, and you might be this kind of person, you might know people like this, who have relationships in their lives with people, whether it's a family member, a friend, or different than that, who they have relationships with people who are constantly draining them or causing problems, drama, conflict, or just generally they don't like this person. This person is negative or discouraging or competitive in a way that is kind of just encouraging you more to struggle than to lift you up. So I know a lot of people with relationships like that, and they feel the need to stay in those relationships for fear of being called a grudge holder, or for thinking that not quote unquote forgiving someone and staying in a relationship with them makes you a bad person. But there are so many different ways to handle relationships like that, and some of those options involve talking to this person, healing with them, and somehow improving the situation or correcting it and just resolving it. And then there are other situations where the answer is, let's go ahead and just move on from this relationship because it's really an unhealthy relationship to have in your life. And I'm not going to get into forgiveness. That's a really kind of deep topic that can be looked at from an ethical standpoint. It can be looked at from a religious or spiritual standpoint. And I don't really want to get into all of that. So I'm going to look at this just purely from a perspective of that grudge holding, where if you are upset with someone and you continue to feel upset with them, some people will look at that as like, well, you're just hanging on to that grudge and you're not letting it go, and that makes you a bad person. And yes, I generally think that we shouldn't carry anger or hurt to the point where it affects the way we feel about ourselves, it affects the way we interact with the world. Like, you shouldn't walk around being a really negative, just angry, heavy person, that pessimistic, where everything you interact with or everyone you interact with is very aware of how pessimistic you are or how grudge holding you are. I don't think that's healthy. I think instead it's about looking at it as, you know, face that situation where you became upset with that person or where they did something to hurt you or you reacted in a negative way, and then really get to the point where you understand why it upset you. And if at the end of the day the kind of the resulting thought is, you know what, I feel bad about myself when I'm with this person. This behavior is not a quality that I want in a friend or someone I keep close to me. I don't trust them. I feel like they have the potential to hurt me or someone close to me. I just don't, I don't enjoy spending time with them. Whatever it is, you have to spend the time and really determine what it is that you're feeling and why you're feeling it. Because if you get to the conclusion that this anger or this grudge that you're feeling is getting in the way of you feeling good about yourself, like if you're carrying this knot in your stomach of this like bitterness towards this person, I do want to challenge you not to carry that. So don't be a grudge holder. Don't live your life in anger towards someone. Don't spend your time talking about someone maybe behind their back, even though I get it, you're everyone, we vent, we share things with people. But if you find that you have a hard time moving forward from a situation, then instead of just talking about the hurt, try to focus your conversation or shift it a little bit, or your thought process, shift it to where you're thinking more of like, okay, how do I let this go? How do I stop letting this person control the way I feel about them, about myself, about other people? Because the key to letting go of a grudge is getting to a place of peace within yourself. It's not about the other person. It's not about deciding not to be upset with them anymore for their sake. It's about deciding to let go of it and move forward from it for my sake. I don't want to feel that grudge. I don't want to feel that anger. I don't want to be hurt and live in that hurt. So it's up to me to find a way to say, you know what, this is what happened. There's nothing I can do about it. Maybe you've chosen to talk about it with that person and it didn't result in a solution. Maybe you don't even feel like a conversation will be helpful or productive. So whatever it is that you've gone through the process of giving it thought, maybe you've talked to someone that you trust who's a good kind of influence, and the conclusion is, I need to let go of this, then that's the focus. Sometimes that requires therapy, but whatever you do, if you decide that that's what you're going to do, you're going to decide to move forward from it, that needs to be for you, not for anyone else. Like, yeah, there are times where we, let's say for the sake of our children, we want to maintain a relationship because the kids will be affected. Okay, but you still probably need some boundaries with what kind of relationship you have with those people or that person, because having a relationship or an interaction with someone doesn't mean that you need to be completely vulnerable and open yourself up completely to people to give them the opportunity to maybe hurt you or get close when you're not really feeling trusting of them, and they haven't really proved that they're worthy of being close to you. So, unless you have to stay in relationship with that person, it's really good to get to a conclusion where you understand the feeling, you make the decision to distance yourself, and you let it go. You move on essentially from that hurt. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't feel any hurt. The memory of the hurt is always going to be there. The memory of the situation is always going to be there. So if you stop long enough to think about what happened, then you might have a little sting in your heart where you're like, oh God, that was so bad. I still can't believe that happened. I still can't believe they did that. And you might feel a flash of anger or sadness or hurt, and that's fine. What I'm kind of focusing on is don't live in that. Don't let that dictate your mood and control your mood and let it ruin your day or several days or whatever. Your goal is to figure out how to get to a place of resolution within yourself so that it's not controlling you. So now let me go to the second part of that. When people look at, if you've set a boundary and you're like, I don't like this, I don't really want to be in a relationship with that person, there will be other people that look at that and say, you can't walk away from this friendship. You need to learn to let it go. You need to move on with this person, and you just need to figure out how to just be fine with them. That's where I struggle. I don't always agree with that. I think it very much depends on who we're talking about, what their relationship is, and it's not a blanket, like, just be in a relationship full stop. Sometimes relationships have to change. You might be in a relationship with someone, a family member or a friend, who's very near and dear to you, and you guys are very close, but then something happens that causes you to kind of pause and really look at this relationship, and now you're questioning, is it good for this relationship to stay as close? Do you need to end it completely, or do I need to just change it? So if the resulting decision is, you know what, I'm going to keep it, please don't let other people's expectations of you and that feeling of obligation be the reason that you leave yourself vulnerable. People don't want to see conflict. They don't want you and this person to end your friendship or your relationship because there's maybe attachment there, emotional investment, or just it affects other people. They don't want that to end. So their own discomfort is potentially going to be the reason that they encourage you to stay uncomfortable. So I don't want you to end this relationship because then I can't be with both of you together. Okay, well, that's selfish of me. I shouldn't expect you to stay uncomfortable or kind of break a boundary that you have for my sake. But that's human nature. Everyone wants peace. Well, most people. Some people create conflict on purpose or kind of poke the bear. But generally speaking, we're going to give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to two people having conflict. Other people outside of that conflict will encourage a resolution because it affects other people. This is something you do have to take in mind. I wish I could tell you that you live in a bubble and your behaviors don't affect anyone else. It's not how it goes. But you still have a choice. You get to decide if in the end you need to stay in that. But more importantly, whether you decide to stay in it or not, you need to decide the level of openness and involvement and exposure that you have to this person. You might decide, you know what, okay, we'll stay in each other's lives and we'll get together for these specific holidays so that everyone can be together. But past that, I'm not interested in communicating casually like we used to. I'm not interested in going on trips together, whatever it is. I'm making a decision to pull back here. And again, other people might come into that, look at that and say, you're just holding a grudge. You need to let it go. Just accept that other people's opinions will always exist. Sometimes they will align with yours. Other times they won't. You are allowed to disagree with people. You are allowed to look at your life and decide if a decision you're making for your life is good for your life. The goal is not to hurt other people, but if your boundaries that come from necessity and self-preservation mean distancing yourself from someone and therefore maybe hurting someone else's feelings because they're sad that you guys can't all be one happy unit, that's an unfortunate side effect that sometimes takes place. But again, you have to weigh, why am I making this decision? Don't do it impulsively. Don't get in a fight and then just blow the whole thing up and just cut yourself off from a bunch of people. That's a reaction that's very emotional and often not mature. But again, give it thought. Really make a decision about, is this a one-off situation that I can move forward from and just be fine? Or was this a deal breaker in a way that I can't come back from it? I won't look at this person the same way. I won't feel the same way about this person. And I don't want to be in a forced fake relationship or whatever. So all that to say, you will be surrounded by people who will pressure you, possibly, to make a decision that goes against your boundary. whether it's because you're just implementing a boundary now and people don't like it, or you're maintaining a boundary that you've had for a long time and people are trying to kind of push past that. So judgment, opinion, those things will come from people in your life. don't don't feel that you have to give in and break your boundary if it's not good for you. Now, if it's time to let it go and really you feel like you've grown and you're at a different place with this person, or they've grown and they've showed that they really have changed, by all means, figure out a safe way to explore that, maybe re-enter that relationship or break some of your walls down, but do it because you want to do it, not because someone else is telling you to do it. And so I'm looking at this quote again because I want to make sure I got all my thoughts together. So I'm calling it, I saw who you are and I'm not unseeing it, part of that quote. So kind of going into that a little bit, there are times where we don't realize certain sides of people exist until we see them. Like we can't prepare or predict that certain people are going to be a certain way. Sometimes you'll have someone in your life who just, behaves in a way that makes you feel very confident in their character. And then all of a sudden something happens, they do something, and you're very shocked, or just, it just hits you in a way where you're like, huh, that is not what I expected, or that really hurt. I can't believe that person did that. And unfortunately, that's human nature. I think if you look at your relationships throughout your life, you can probably see things that people did that you didn't like. And a lot of that happens day to day. It's little choices, and we can just like move on from it. But there are some things that happen that we can't unsee. We can't let it go because it clashes so strongly with our values or our morals, or it just hurt us in a deep way that we just don't really know how to come back from. And when that happens, that's just an unfortunate part of human nature. It sucks. And it really is a disappointment when you see something in someone that just makes you change the way you look at them or makes you change the way you feel about them. It sucks. It's not a good feeling. And a lot of the times it can cause you to feel really sad, or where you kind of have to grieve the version of them you thought they were. And, we might do that. We might be a certain way that people expect us to act, and then we might do something that really shatters someone's view of us, and that's just human nature. I've had it both ways. I've seen people do stuff, and I'm sure people have seen me do. It's just human nature. It's not personal. Sometimes it is if someone intentionally hurts you, but a lot of the times it's just that we're different. People are different from each other, and it's inevitable that someone's going to do something that is a turnoff for you as a person or in a relationship. But if you are in that situation where you see something in someone and that is a behavior or a trait that you just can't move forward from, that is okay. It's unfortunate, but it's okay. And other people might see that same quality and not have the same reaction. They may think it's not that big of a deal, you're overreacting, but I don't think it's fair when people try to impose their view on others. So yeah, you might have someone that's like, hey, I hear how you feel. I think you need to reconsider your reaction. And sometimes there's a lot of wisdom in that, and you need to think about it and really reflect on if that's a good choice. And that's where I was saying, give it some thought. Don't just react impulsively. But if you've really thought it through and someone else is like, you overreacted, I'm just here to tell you that your feelings matter, as cheesy as that sounds. Now, sometimes you're going to be wrong. I'm not going to tell you all your feelings are right. But if you're making a decision, whether other people think it's right or wrong or not, does not matter. You need to learn to stand on your 2 feet. And all too often, I work with people, or I know people who keep themselves in relationships or friendships that are very, very destructive, very toxic. And they feel a sense of obligation or a fear of setting boundaries or any number of things that cause them to stay in that very dysfunctional relationship. And you know what? That's not fair. That's not fair to that person that's living in that state where it takes a huge toll on them. And there's some people that can work through that and get to a point where they're not so affected, where they're stronger, they have kind of more of a resilience so they can stay in those situations. But there are other people that can't. The damage that was done, or if there's a trauma history, or just whatever the situation is, sometimes it's a deal breaker. And so you might hear this and be like, that's the dumbest thing that anyone has ever said. I believe in obligation. I believe in you stick through it. And if that's how you feel, please continue to live your life that way. You need to do what's best for yourself. It's okay if you disagree with me, but there are people out there that need to hear me or someone else say, hey, it's okay if you need to remove yourself from this situation because it really is causing a lot of harm in your life or you're really unhappy. So if you are the person that needs to hear that today, I'm saying this for your sake. Please take care of yourself. And I'm not saying that in a way that's like, be selfish, forget everyone else. They all can suffer as long as you're happy. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. That's just life doesn't work that way. I'm saying, please consider yourself as well. Consider the whole situation, consider other people, consider how others are affected, but please consider yourself and consider if the decisions that you're making are serving others and hurting you, or if there's a way to serve yourself and others, or if everyone just kind of needs to have a little bit of a disappointment, but at the end of the day, it's the best thing for everyone. Like, there are so many ways to look at solutions for this. Depends on what your situation is and what we're talking about, but you do deserve to consider yourself in every equation. Take care of yourself, make sure you prioritize yourself as well as other people. You can't constantly be at the very end of the line of who gets to feel good in life. Sometimes other people will, you have to prioritize someone else's feelings more than yours, but you just got to be part of the equation and part of that kind of thought. So going back to our quote here, let me get it up. People will call it holding grudges. I'm calling it, I saw who you are and I'm not unseeing it. And again, it's not meant to be ugly. It's not meant to be judgmental. It's just meant to be very, if your eyes are opened to a situation that you are not okay with, please feel free to consider the details of that, to make decisions based on, does this person fit in your life, or are you better off distancing yourself from them? So I think I covered it all. I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I hope this gives you something to think about, and I appreciate you being with me. I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.